Welcome to the IGEOS Show, where we help grow the passion for an extraordinary workplace. If you're listening to or watching this, we hope to strengthen your passion for a workplace that has the potential not only to have an extraordinary impact on your life, but also on the world. My name is Amit Riker, and my co-hosts are Valerio Pascotto and Timothy Galway. Now to you, Valerio.
Thank you, Amit. What drives our efforts is really a vision and credo to enrich humaneness in the workplace. For that, we interview thought leaders who have been inspired by values of compassion, empathy, and modeling to share their discoveries, challenges, and successes. Really, there is no time like now to change the tide, from hateful divisiveness to seeking similarities, from the myth of the genius to the wisdom of humankind, and from the fears of the primitive brain to the wonder of generosity and warmth.
To support you in this work of creating extraordinary workplaces, we would like to offer you a free worksheet you can download on the 5 disciplines of a high-performance team. Just go to IGEOS.net to download the sheet and learn more about us. And now, on to our guest for today. Welcome, conscious leaders, conscious teams. My name is Amit Riker, and I have with me my co-host Valerie Pascotto, and this is the IGEOS Show. We have a fantastic guest with us today, Valerie Red-Horse Mohl. She is the Executive Director of Social Venture Circles, and I'm going to give a little bit of a bio before we jump into our conversation with her. So, Valerie Red-Horse Mohl of Cherokee ancestry is the Executive Director of Social Venture Circle, a nonprofit organization with 57 years of combined experience leading the way in the field of social impact, building and galvanizing the business world to create social, economic, and environmental change. She's also the the founder and owner of Red Horse Financial Group, which has more than 30 years of in-depth experience in the financial services and investment banking industry with a unique expertise in the tribal government sector. Valerie has raised and structured over $3 billion in capital for tribal nations and holds 7 financial industry regulatory authority registrations, and that's FINRA. She's also the owner and founder of Red Horse Native Productions. I was fascinated to discover this, where it's a film and television production primarily focused on bringing important social impact documentaries to the screen, where she directs, writes, and produces. Valerie was also inducted into the NAWBO, the National Association of Women Business Owners Hall of Fame in 2008. And so also a fun trivia bit, Valerie has been married to former NFL football player Kurt Mohl since 1982. And the couple, they have 3 children, Courtney, Derek, and Chelsea. So Valerie, so glad to have you joining the IGEOS Show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you both.
Wonderful. So I had the pleasure of briefly meeting you at the Conscious Company Leaders Forum, and you were up there sharing a little bit about your story. And some members of our audience may know about Social Venture Circles or its original Social Venture Network. Before we dig into that a little bit more, I'd love to ask you, you've now been the executive director for over a year. What's one thing that people may not know that you would like people to know more of about what you're doing with Social Venture Circles?
Great, absolutely. Great question. So I think people are still getting used to the fact that we are a newly merged organization of 2 of the longest standing nonprofits focused on social impact in different ways, but now we have these combined strengths of a greater, bigger, better network. And Social Venture Network, which is the oldest legacy organization, was started way back in the 80s by what I call business luminaries who were really focused on this idea of sustainable business, regenerative business, business making a difference in the world. And some of those folks, you would recognize their companies, certainly Ben and Jerry's and Eileen Fisher and Seventh Generation. I mean, I consider these sort of the rock stars of our space and really proving that you can have profit and purpose. But along the way, after they formed Social Venture Network, many other nonprofits that are still active today doing fantastic work spun out of that parent nonprofit. So B-Lab is one of our spinoffs that does the B certifications, ASBC, Valley, Net Impact, Opportunity Collaboration, and one of those was called Investors Circle, with a spinoff in the 90s to focus just on the facilitation of capital by impact investors into early stage social entrepreneur businesses. And they had local networks all over the US that had regular sessions, pitch sessions, and really facilitated literally hundreds of millions of dollars in that early stage capital. So with the merger in 2018, Investors Circle merged back into SVN. To answer your question, what I think people might not understand is we now have the strength of what is literally a global and national large network of many different types of people focused on business as a social impact and as a force for good. But we also still have the strength of those local networks, but we're not limited. So we have local networks that then socialize a deal through a pipeline that goes around our entire network, and we don't have just the early stage capital as a parameter. We look at all stages of capital and all different types of structures. So really we have this combined strengths now, and that's what we're still trying to message to folks, that we're not just one or the other. We are this newly merged organization that can really offer a lot more.
Wow, that is amazing. Just even to dig into a little bit of the history of like all these amazing, just incredibly amazing organization that spun out of it and how it's really evolved. And it's really exciting to hear sort of the new entity for new opportunities coming together. Beautiful, beautiful. Valerie, would love to hear a little bit more about sort of your background in just with your amazing, really fascinating background in movies and sort of production, and tell us a bit about your journey and how you ended up here as executive director of this really amazing new visionary organization.
Well, it is a bit of an unusual story. Sometimes I look back and think to myself, it's not logical, but it's amazing and wonderful. So I always, from a very early age, had a desire to be an activist, to be part of positive change, to leave the world a better place. My mother drilled that into me, my community. As you know, I'm American Indian, and we definitely have a focus on our next 7 or more generations. So constantly feeling the need to do something very activist oriented. So that led me initially to major in film and start the film business. I believe that film is a medium that is so powerful in terms of messaging and galvanizing, unlike any other medium. So that was my first initial focus. But when I was at UCLA in film school many years ago, I decided to take a day job just to earn some extra cash. I was on a full scholarship and needed some extra spending money. And I interviewed for a company and I had no idea what they did. The gentleman I interviewed with said, we do high yield bonds, leverage finance, and we're looking for someone, we're moving out from New York, we're looking for someone to come help, just kind of be a Gal Friday office manager, organize us. And what I didn't know at the time, his name was Mike Milken, and that meant nothing to me. I had no idea who Mike Milken was. Now you can read books, and I mean, he really set a standard that changed Wall Street. And what was good for me, though, is I worked there from 1978 to 1985. So through my graduation as a film student, basically, I interviewed for this job. It was Mike Milken, and I started to work there as a college student. And over the time working with Mike and the entire crew at Drexel Burnham Lambert, I felt like I got an MBA in finance. So I really came out of that experience knowing everything about financing large projects. And we had done quite a bit of big business as well as resort and hospitality entities. So to just make a long story short, I started working as a financial advisor to tribes in my community and eventually started an investment bank. but I didn't want to give up making film. So I was doing both film and finance, but primarily working truly in impact in the sense that access to capital and access to the media is super important for the underserved communities on tribal reservations that I was working with. And so really having to look at integrated capital and messaging and also advocacy, legislation. There was so much that impacted our people and just in terms of economic development. So I really was getting training, I think, for what I do now, but maybe we didn't call it the same thing. And then if you fast forward, my youngest daughter got into Stanford. She's a beach volleyball player, which seems far removed from anything related to what I'm doing. And yet that's what got me into the Bay Area. And I came up and ended up working on a board at Stanford and teaching a class at Stanford. And it got me really sucked into the community in the Northern California Bay Area, people that want to make a difference, that I felt like I had found my true tribe in terms of all the synergy with mission and values aligned. And one thing led to another, and I was asked to interview for this position, which was a huge life change because I had owned my own businesses my entire professional career. And I wasn't even sure what to expect to interview, to get a paycheck, and work for a nonprofit. It was just a very big change for me. But I was so honored to be offered the position. I started a little over a year ago in 2018. And I'm tired. We have a lot of work to do. We have big plans and mission statements and theory of change, and it's fantastic. So I'm thrilled and honored to be here. But the journey of me sitting here and being in this position relates to things like beach volleyball and filmmaking. So it's not necessarily logical.
Love that story. I love the journey, and it seems so often some of the most beautiful paths are the ones that are unexpected and unplanned, and it makes sense much more in retrospect than moving forward. So wonderful, beautiful.
Valerie, if I may ask, if I am a business person, maybe even at the head of a company, what would you say would be my interest in creating this regenerative, equitable, and prosperous economy? What would be my interest in doing that?
Well, I mean, obviously, we feel that it's imperative that if we don't put people and planet first, our children and their children may not have air to breathe and water to drink. And there are so many people that will be left without work and in poverty. And so we feel that as a business owner or a business leader, one has to think about purpose alongside profit. And really the thesis is philanthropy is something like 17% of the world's economy. And so giving money through philanthropic efforts is still important, but it's never going to be enough. So we truly believe that every business dollar that is transacted, regardless of your product, your service, it affects the people who are your employees, it affects the community around you, it affects the world around you. And if you think of the big companies right now, if they were leading with purpose, think of how big of a difference they could make. And some of them are trying to, some of them we're seeing a shift, but it's certainly not enough. And so the class I teach at Stanford, as an example, I work with entrepreneurs who are 18 to 21. They're just thinking about starting a business when they get out of college. And they come in knowing that they have to lead with purpose. They don't even question it. It's just part of their DNA because of their age, to make sure that they're either reducing the carbon footprint or they're reducing poverty or they're addressing human rights violations while making money. And that's the big difference between our organization and philanthropic efforts. We really think the difference is made through that commerce and the capitalism where the money is transacting. We have to think about purpose within that.
Thank you.
Valerie, with the incredibly rich history that the roots of SBC has, and now with the incredible potential with sort of the remerging of Investor Circle and SVN into SBC, what's something personally for you that you're just excited and lit up for the vision and the future of what SBC has to offer?
Well, I think SVC for me represents what in our Indian tribal culture is that full circle. So we in Native American communities are always thinking about our ancestors and the people who went before us, our elders, but we're simultaneously thinking about our future generations and our children. So we don't live in a linear time frame. We live in that circle of everything is connected, and we're constantly learning from both sides of life, the ancestors who went before and the children who are coming after. And I think SVC represents such a fantastic model of that, because I stand on the shoulders, obviously, of folks who have role modeled and given us examples and case studies of businesses that have successfully led with purpose. Is it perfect? No. You know, the other day I had a wonderful conversation with Jerry of Ben and Jerry's, and both Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, longtime members, are going to be speaking at our conference. But they, when I talk to them, they say, look, it was not easy. The challenges they had to keep their impact intact, and their impact was not just with their product and their company behavior, but when they had a partnership with Greyston Bakery, they were doing open hiring, and they literally changed an entire community of formerly incarcerated and single mothers and former drug addicts. I mean, they literally transformed. And so with the purchase of Unilever, the acquisition of Ben & Jerry's, that single case study and that model with all of its challenges is so important to the business world, to be able to say, okay, this wasn't a tech company, this wasn't a unicorn, it's a sustainable food company, but it's now trying to make a difference by influencing a $60 billion multinational corporation, which is Unilever. And that's the case study we want to replicate over and over, even though it wasn't a perfect journey, even though it was challenging. And let's improve on that. And many of our members who are from the old legacy organization and who still are our lifetime members, it's just never enough. And I appreciate that. They really push us to say, we have to move billions, we have to affect more, we have to make more change, because they look at the change they have affected. And I look at it with pride and applause, and they say, no, it's not enough. We can never rest and be happy with that. We have to be doing more. We have to be advocating. We have to be making sure that there isn't just shareholder value, but value for employees and the community. And so I love that on one hand, I learned from those that went before, and I love those case studies, but I'm still being pushed to make a big change and big differences and new initiatives for our future generations. So that full circle is really what I love about the entire organization.
A lot of pride for what's been accomplished and a lot of potential of what is still needed to be done. Sounds like, and it's inspiring to hear that even, dare I say, like the legends of the industry, some of the real pioneers see this as there's still so much more to do, and sounds like there's still that very much that drive to say, hey, we've accomplished a lot and we've still got so much more, so let's keep going. And so I love that. I love that.
I've had the opportunity and the privilege of 3 grandchildren in the last 4 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
So when you mentioned this looking for the next generation, your children, what would you say is one thing that really impacted you as you were watching them grow and watching them take this sense of wanting to have purpose? What would be the learning that came from that?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because being a mother is my favorite role and I take the most pride. And if anyone asks me what my greatest accomplishments are, it has nothing to do with movies and finance and work. I have 3 beautiful, amazing children. Darn them, they grew up though. They're all out of the house now. And my husband and I were very much hands-on parents. And I actually was really reflecting on this question. So thank you for asking it a few days ago, and I'll tell you why. It was a very unique situation. So our 3 children are children of a professional athlete, a former NFL player, as you mentioned in my intro. So every single one of them played sports at pretty high levels. And so we were constantly in the midst of coaching and team mom and carpooling and getting to practice and worrying about, are you going to get the scholarship to college and what team's going to get picked? And, our youngest actually went to Junior Olympics and now she's playing at Stanford, and our son played football at his university, and our oldest daughter played basketball. So, it was 30 some years of parenting with a big focus on empowering them and raising them in the right way, but a lot of sports, a lot of activities. And we had a lot going on with our church. We did mission trips. So we had a busy, busy life. And I will tell you that during that time, my husband and I, the things we worried about for them is, will they be good people? Will they get good grades? Will they get into the right college? Are we teaching them the right principles? And you think about all of those things. But I will tell you, not once when I was raising my children did I think, will they have water to drink and air to breathe? It just wasn't part of that busy routine as I was getting them ready for volleyball practice and rushing to the, next event. And this last week, I was asked to sit in a round table up here at NASA, and the conversation was around going to the moon to mine and create sort of a colony for to get natural resources, sort of in addition to what we have down here, because we're in a bit of an emergency situation. And the conversation had to do with how people like myself, kind of what they consider thought leaders and impact, could help with the idea around the human aspect and the socialization, that it can't just be technology if we're taking people up to the moon to live. And I was telling my youngest daughter this. I thought it was fascinating and wonderful. And instead of picking up on what an interesting conversation, she's 21, she's a senior at the university, she's had an amazing life. And she looked at me and said, Mom, do I need to worry? Do I need to worry about natural resources in my lifetime? And as a parent and a grandparent now for you, those are things you typically want to add to your worry list while you're trying to, get them to the next event and get them into the right college and whatnot. And so I almost started crying because I thought, I don't want my children to worry about that. And we need to address it. I don't want it to be politicized. I just want to make sure we're leaving this world a better place. And I want them to worry about the normal things they're going to need to worry about happiness and family and life work and life mission, but I don't want them to worry about the air they breathe and the natural resources and running out of things that are essential to life. So that will drive me for what I hope is another 30 years of my work career.
That's very inspiring. Thank you.
Well, Valerie, what that makes me think of is I compared to the work that you've done, and compared to the work that Valerio has done, and even our other business partner Timothy Galway, just a immense sort of history of what you and have contributed to the world and what you continue to contribute. Like you said, hopefully for another 30 years. What might you say to the young leaders, and maybe I put myself in that category, right, where I look up to people like yourself and Valerio and Tim, of just like the impact just through your values and the work that you've put in, and just tenacity, just especially with all the stuff that's going on in the world. It can be really easy to just feel hopeless. What would you say to the next generation of leaders, whether it be through SBC, but and you kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier, what would you say that we really need to be looking at from a place of like groundedness and inspiration and maybe just conviction? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I feel very strongly about how we work together. And I think what has happened, so at SBC, we absolutely believe in capitalism. That's business, and that's what we have in America. It is the best system, but it's been warped. We do think it's become too extreme. And what capitalism in today's culture has created is a very much a me culture, an individual culture. And I think social Media and technology might be even encouraging that, because you can spend a lot of time by yourself and just trying to do things for yourself, the gathering of wealth and the gathering of property and the toys and the things, and it's about me, and my resume and getting ahead and what am I going to make, and it's become too much focused on the individual. And in my historic communities, tribal nations, you still had rewards for achievements and recognition of leaders, and so it wasn't, just everyone was on an even playing field. You definitely had achievement, and that's okay. But there was still a sense of community. And I think when we look back at all the positive changes, the big movements that we've seen, in the civil rights era, yes, you have people like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, but it took lots and lots of people coming together and working together. And my film about Wilma Mankiller really addresses the ability of working together across political parties, across racial divides, across wealth and poverty divides, men and women coming together for common goals. And my message to the young generation really kind of falls back on the sports analogies. We cannot do it as an individual. We're stronger as a team. And if you really want to make a difference, you must work together. So we have to stop with the me culture. And that's not to say, again, that you can't be rewarded for good behavior, that you can't still get paid for the type of work you're doing. But this idea of just amassing so much wealth at the expense of other people and trying to do it as an individual and not really thinking like a team is not going to serve us well. And if we're going to make this movement be as important and effective as the civil rights movement, as the women's rights movement, we have to work together and come together and really, really focus on making that change and that difference.
Oh, I love that. And it just made me think so much of the work that Valeria and Tim created with IGEOS, and which I've had an honor to join and be a part of very much the difference between an individual mindset and a team mindset, and how, especially in times of immense challenge, I guess, it's being able to tap into the team and the community and our tribes that we find real magic, possibly, if I dare to say. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Valerie, did you have any thoughts on that? Just because it's so rich with what we deal with.
Yes, we started with this idea of a shifting mindset from what's in it for me to the honor and privilege of working in a team. We then moved more to, are we choosing a fear-based approach to this shift, or are we choosing a heart-based approach to this shift? So that would be my question. I mean, ultimately, I would even dare to call it love, this experience of love. Could you narrate a situation where that touched you deeply, that we don't need fear to make a change into a team mindset? We need love to make that change.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you've hit on something that is super important and personal to me. And sometimes I'm cautious about talking too much about it because I'm respectful of everyone's personal walk and their personal faith. But I am a very, very faithful person. I've been in Christian ministry for all of my life. And a lot of what I do is driven by my belief that we must love God and love one another as our two first mandates in life before anything else. And I have tried to operate my entire life by seeing other people with love in my heart, even people that cut me off on the freeway. And my family laughs at me and says, "Mom, why are you so nice to them?" I just feel that has to be our overriding principles. And there is a movement that has been created from some of the folks within SBC. It's separate, but still very much aligned with us. And it's called the Sacred Economy. And it looks at business with a group of religious leaders and folks from all different types of faith. And there are some atheists involved too, but they are all people that believe economy must be handled in a way that is led with love, as part of the purpose and a part of the care for people and planet. You cannot take that human element of loving one another out of business, or it just becomes empty. And for me, I have heard people say that a lot of the work we do in philanthropy and a lot of the work we do at SBC, it's just not enough, that we have to really have these, we have to have a large social revolution. And I agree with that, but I think it starts with the small acts of kindness. And I don't think you can ever dismiss or diminish those acts of kindness and love. And I actually founded a ministry with my family on a reservation in northern Minnesota, where we saw people just really suffering, almost third world country conditions, poverty, addiction, children that were homeless, and you don't want to be homeless in northern Minnesota in the winter. And bottom line, we probably affected 20 to 30 lives. We rebuilt homes, we did children's programs. My own children would come home with lice and be very upset with me. And it was very rough and tough. But the amount of love that we experienced in that community when we were there, we weren't just helping them, they were helping us too. They were helping us understand their culture and their way of life. And I will never regret that, because it was so personal for me. And I feel that even if you affect 1 or 2 lives, that is enough. That is something, that is a step. So I support what you are saying, that we have to lead with love, because otherwise we will always then gravitate back to that me first. And that's not the way to make a difference and make the world a better place.
Thank you. The emotion behind it is so visible and very beautiful. Thank you.
Valerie, to this effect of bringing love to situations that can be very challenging, the story you shared about being in Minnesota and supporting that community, looking at sort of what you see coming up ahead, or what you see right now in terms of challenges that you see SVC and maybe just the community in general, what do you see are, besides some of the obvious ones that you've already talked about, but maybe if you could dig in a little bit more, like what's really calling to you in terms of the challenge that you see we have sort of in the next phase, whether it be for SVC, and how do you see the community really needing to come together through love, through connection, to be able to really be able to, I don't want to say tackle, but be able to sort of embrace what the challenge that's ahead of us, and to be able to move forward in sort of enriching and loving ways?
Well, I think part of the challenge is we have to be prepared to be uncomfortable and to even make others uncomfortable. It's a different sort of mindset. One of the members of my network actually was just emailing me today and said, there are topics we're going to discuss at our conference that will make people very uncomfortable in the room. And I think that's true, because I think there still is a stereotype. When I took this position, I told a lot of my colleagues in the finance business what I was going to do. And almost every one of them said, oh, that's where you give up profit to do good with your business. So we're still fighting this stereotype that love and purpose cannot somehow simultaneously exist with profit. And I think we have to be prepared to take risks and role model being uncomfortable, and role model things that are not the norm now, that we hope will become the norm. And I'll give you a personal example from my life. When I was running my production company, there was a situation that came up, and one of my employees said to me, it had to do with our interaction with the union, the Screen Actors Guild, and we were hiring actors. And she came to me and said, in front of my entire staff and crew, well, we need to put down the wrong answer here. We have to lie to the Screen Actors Guild in order to get our permit, and everyone does it. Everyone in the industry does it, so I'm going to do it. I just need you to sign off on it. And I said, I'm sorry, no, but I don't lie, and I'm not going to be deceptive. And she argued with me because she said, no, you're going to be so impacted by what they're going to make you do if you don't lie. And she went on and on. And I think when you talk about a fear-based culture, we're fearful of repercussions that have been ingrained in us, that we have to make money, that we have to do things a certain way. And lying and cheating and stealing are often okay, as long as the end result is what we're hoping for. And that is something that even really good people are used to. I mean, this woman who was telling me I should lie on this form to a union was a very good person. She was not a criminal. She wasn't someone that did, crazy things in her life. It was just standard business in the entertainment industry. Everyone does it, she says. And I refuse. And what I had to do is I had to go to the union and sit down with them and say, look, I'm telling you the truth, but I cannot do what you will ultimately need me or require me to do. Can we come up with an agreement? Because I'm a small production company, but I am telling you the truth about how many people I have on set or whatever the question was. And they worked with me. And I realized that it is a mind shift. It is a whole paradigm shift to think honesty and love and purpose and care for people, giving your employees more ownership in your company, less shareholder value, and answering less perhaps to some of the pressures of your investors in a typical situation is a paradigm shift. And many entrepreneurs have a fear. And I'll be honest, when I put the right answer, the honest answer down to the union, I was a little scared, because if they had done what they would typically do, it would have almost bankrupted my particular production. So we have to move past that fear and be supported by one another with examples and people that have gone before. So if I had to, I could help someone talk to a person at the union today because I went through it without repercussions. But that's what SBC is. They have so many role models and luminaries in business that can incubate and help and mentor. I do believe we can get to that place where business is different. But like I said in the beginning, it's uncomfortable, it's fearful, it's scary, we're taking risks, but I think that's okay. And I think SBC's role is to push people in that direction and say it's okay, but it might be painful.
Valerie, if I took it even a step further and said that actually planet and people, focus on planet and people, increases profits. So do you have an example, very practical example where that has happened? That actually the focus on planet and people has increased profits, not decreased it.
We have so many examples. In fact, we have two of our members at SBC do very large portfolio management and analysis with the ESG lens, environment, social, and governance. Erica Karp of Cornerstone out of New York, and Trillium Asset Management, which is very broad. And they will show you data that companies leading with planet, people, purpose first will always beat the benchmarks, and because often they're properly governed and managed. And that is usually the number one key to a good business, is good management and these good practices. But I can also tell you that businesses focused on planet right now are at the cutting edge of innovation and are able to really scale if they have a good product. And one of my favorite products from one of our young companies is a company called Clean Robotics, and they're really addressing the recycling issue of China not taking contaminated waste. And they've created an artificial intelligence box that sorts it automatically, so we don't have to make human mistakes. And I know I always do when I have to have all those choices. I always get it wrong. But my point is, you get something like that, and they're making a huge difference, but they're very profitable. I think they can't even answer all of their orders right now because they're in demand. And we have another company that does prosthetics for people, and it's a state-of-the-art medical technology, and it's fantastic. But they're also doing access to people in third world countries that are amputees so they can get to work and school. And it's amplified their profit and their revenue by doing something like that, as opposed to taking away. So there are examples after examples of doing the right thing, proper governance, paying the right wages in your supply chain, even if you're working with, other countries in the fashion industry and the other industries like coffee and food. It's been shown over and over again, you can still make a profit and even more by treating everyone right in every aspect of your business. So that is part of what we do with our case studies, and we're excited to be able to teach and educate and consult with companies that have those types of questions that say, you know, we're a little skeptical, and we can say, oh, you don't have to be. We have hundreds of case studies.
Wonderful. In a way, there's so much talk about this idea of discretionary effort. And I cannot think of more of a royal highway into discretionary effort when one experiences appreciation and gratitude. It really swings open that door of wanting to do more. There's no, oh, thank God it's Friday, oh my God, it's Monday, but just the privilege of being able to make a difference.
Well, I think that's where, you know, I mentioned my heritage a lot, but I think we can learn from a lot of other cultures. I think the whole idea of coming together as one community, but still celebrating. There are other cultures and other people that really have role model community sharing, community giving, and people and planet first. And I just love learning from those cultures, especially my own ancestors in the Native American community. So much that we can learn from there. But also, I think changing the paradigm of the power structure is something we're focused on between investor and business owner. It doesn't have to be a power structure. It can be one of shared goals and mutual strengths and coming together in that teamwork model I mentioned. Because historically, one of the greatest challenges in business has been this extractive model of investments and big funds taking advantage and really caring only about the bottom line, what single bottom line, and then extractive exits and forcing companies into situations that are not beneficial to them and their employees. And so that is an area where when we talk about leading with love, it's difficult, it's challenging. You asked me, you know, what is challenging? It's one thing to lead with love, and if you're making a product and you're out, you know, with a B2C and you're working with customers, you can certainly be friendly and nice and loving. But when you're in the boardroom and you've got investors breathing down your neck and they need a return, and maybe you're not ready to exit and they want you to, I mean, that's a whole different discussion, and that's something we're focused on. So when we talk about a love economy, it's every single aspect of business, not just the easy parts. And because we have had so many years of financial structuring and integrated capital, we focus on how to solve for some of those issues, but also how to make it a much more equitable process.
Thank you.
Valerie, you mentioned, as we're wrapping up here, just bringing it sort of all back together. I think I heard you mentioned a couple of times that you have a conference coming up. Could you tell us a little bit about that? What can we expect at the conference? Who might it be a good fit for people to attend? And then maybe even if I'm talking to somebody, how might I know that they'd be a good fit to join SBC?
Absolutely. So first of all, you can go to our website at sbcimpact.org and get a lot more information. But I am so excited about our conference. It is being held in Berkeley at the Claremont this year, November 13th through 15th. And we are calling the conference our new tagline, Welcome to the Next Economy. And I will tell you, the one criticism we have from our conferences, our conference attendees, is there's so much good stuff. I couldn't make it to everything. So it is jam-packed with speakers as well as interactive sessions, and there's something for everyone. If you prefer a little more interactive and intimate, you know, kind of community sharing, we have that. If you want to hear keynotes from people like Ben Cohen, and we have some pretty big headliners, Natalie Molina-Nino. We have leaders in the community coming to talk about their experiences and their case studies. We also have hands-on, how to structure term sheets that are really more about impact and purpose than extractive nature, how to structure an exit as an employee buyout. So we get very nuts and bolts as well. So there's really something for everyone. And I will be also doing a panel of tribal leaders coming and talking about impact in tribal nations, which is obviously very personal and exciting for me, but our community is interested in that. And that's sort of a new unknown area of impact investing. So honestly, it's 3 days jam-packed of wonderful sessions and people coming together. And I highly recommend coming if you're interested at all in social impact in business. And also becoming a member of SBC. We have these events all year round in different markets all over the country. We have virtual meetings. If anyone has a company that they're raising money, they can apply. We have programs for entrepreneurs, programs for investors. It's just a very, very rich, full agenda at our network, like I said in the beginning, because we're now combined between a global and national network and local markets. We really have something for everyone. If you are serious, very serious about business as a force for good and making impact in your business.
Oh, it's beautiful. Valerie, excited to hear about all the things coming up with the conference and just the continuous growth. SBCimpact.org will be sure to share the links and the information when we publish this episode. Final thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience, with anything that comes pressing for you, with what you'd like to share?
Well, I really want to see the next economy become a norm and a reality. And like I said earlier, I do seriously believe that it takes teamwork. And so I just want people to understand that we all are about collaboration at SBC. We don't believe in working in silos. So if you have anything you're working on and have any question, we're here to be, we're a nonprofit, so we're not competing with anyone. We're here to be a resource and a place for folks to come and gather and think and convene. And if you're really serious, we'd love to have you become a part of our network. And again, work as a team and do this together.
Beautiful. I love that. Valerie Red-Horse Mohl, everybody. So grateful to have you join us today. And thank you everyone listening or watching this. My name is Amit Riker and my co-host is Valerie Pascotto. And thanks so much for joining us today on the IGEOS Show, where we are interviewing thought leaders, industry leaders who are really making an extraordinary impact, not only in the workplace, but also the world. So thank you again. And until next time, we look forward to continuing the conversation. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have many more exciting thought leaders to come on this show. If you enjoyed this interview, please click the like button and also subscribe so that you can stay tuned to learn from other powerful thought leaders in future shows. We would also appreciate your comments and feedback on the show, as well as who else you would like to hear from. And don't forget to visit our site, IGEOS.net, to download the free worksheet on the 5 disciplines of a high-performance team. See you next time.